Question and answer thing. Hang on. Hold the phone. This tripod looks wonky. Now, this thing's probably going to come out of my head this whole time. I don't really care. I'm mixing it up. I just did a film for Blurb. I walked on the beach. I did my calisthenics routine. I read. I had coffee. As you can tell, I probably had coffee. You think I've had too much coffee? I might have had too much coffee. I don't know. There's a possibility that I had too much coffee. I don't know. I'm just doing back-to-back Q&A things. And for some reason, you guys have been absolutely out of your mind sending questions in. And a few of them are actually decent questions. The rest of them, yeah, you guys are psychos. Do you guys know about this magazine, Wilderness? It's kind of a, I'll tell you, it's kind of a bro thing. There's a lot of bros, a lot of dudes in this, but it's, I really like the materials. I like the trim size. It's, I want to say 10.5 by 8, I think is the trim size, or maybe I got that backwards. No, not backwards, but maybe off by a ½ inch. Could be the other way. I think it's 10.5 by 8, or 8.5 by 10. Something like that. It's got kind of a flexi cover, which is a cross between a hardcover and a soft cover, although it's a little on the lighter side than heavier side. It's got nice uncoated white stock on the middle. Feel not entirely uncoated, but it's really nice. But I also really like the design of this thing. There's some really interesting design ideas that I think I want to co-op. And the stories, it kind of reminds me a little bit about AG, a little bit like AG23, but it's on a grander scale, I guess you could say, in terms of how many stories and how much content is in each issue. I simply would not have the time to do this unless this was the only thing I was doing, but it's kind of worth checking out if you haven't seen it. What else is going on? What else? Is there anything new in this room that I forgot to mention? 2 new things on the way to me, unimportant as to what they are. My head goes to, will they get stolen before they're delivered, and will they actually get delivered? Because my brain still resides in the fact that COVID has disrupted so many things. And oh, by the way, for those of you out there who are so prone to saying that COVID is over, there's a couple of things we need to address before we get to this question and answer. And this is completely impromptu off the top of my head, by the way, but I was reminded of this a few days ago. It's pretty easy to say COVID is over, unless you're in business. And if you're a sole proprietor, if you work for yourself, if you live in a small bubble or a small vacuum, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but a lot of people kind of live in a small place, small vacuum, small circles, small job, it might appear to you as if COVID is over. But if you do business, and especially if you do business in the international market, COVID is crushing business. It's still crushing business, and we're probably going to be in this for several more years. And anyone who's studied the finance world, anyone who's studied the banking world, anyone who has studied the raising money world, you will understand that the financial markets are tight. Banking system, tight. Lending money, tight. Everything is super tight. So it's not over. And oh, by the way, every time that you profess in public that COVID is over, you are directly disrespecting every single person on the planet that has long COVID. Long COVID is real. And coming from someone who had chronic illness for 5 years, and I gave up trying to get other people to understand what chronic disease was like, because frankly, if you're not in the middle of chronic disease, it's almost impossible to understand how bad it is. A friend of mine reached out the other day and apologized because his partner has long COVID, and she's in real trouble, and she's been in trouble for over 2 years. And oh, by the way, in her 30s, no underlying issues. So for those of you out there prone to conspiracy that say the only people who get long COVID are somehow unhealthy before or overweight now, you are wrong. You are just flat out all cap wrong. So my friend reached out to me and said, you know, she's having trouble getting treatment. Insurance in America has already figured out a way to weasel out of treating people with long COVID, or saying we don't have an official definition, which means we don't have to treat it. This is very reminiscent of a lot of people with Lyme disease. I had really difficult time getting treatment. I had 3 months of arguing with doctors and fighting with doctors. And my friend reached out and said, I need to apologize because I never fully understood what you were going through until now. And oh, by the way, why do you think they call it long COVID and not chronic COVID? Oh, another tie back to Lyme disease. Oh yeah, if you think these organizations are on the up and up, you got, it's the AC/DC song. You got another thing coming. Somebody just pinged in, email, I'm kind of popular. It's probably somebody wanting to partner, probably a brand, because probably want to work with me as an influencer. God, can you imagine? I don't think there's anything I would rather be called less than an influencer. That is nails on a chalkboard to me. Okay, get through this stupid stuff and get on to the real things. This is a nice little, and I've got probably 20 questions on here, which I'm only going to break this into 2. So we're going to do like 6, 8 questions. The first one is, I made a mention last time, or someone asked me the question about Salvador versus Under Fire, the photography movies. And then a couple of people said, well, idiot, you left out The Year of Living Dangerously. And that was The Year of Living Dangerously with Mel Gibson before he went off the rails. How many celebrities go off the rails? It's unbelievable. He went off the rails. Not to say that I don't love The Road Warrior. I do. That's a classic. But Year of Living Dangerously is a classic movie. Linda Hunt was unbelievable in that movie. Mel Gibson was great in that movie. Sigourney Weaver was great in that movie. Peter Weir's an amazing director. I love the landscape. I love the news story. I love the time frame. I love the sets. I love everything about Year of Living Dangerously. I've seen it many times. And people were saying, well, what about the Bang Bang Club? The Bang Bang Club was a good book because the Bang Bang Club is based on real folks that were covering the end of apartheid in South Africa. Jal Silva, Ken Osterbrook, Kevin Carter, a few others. I did not like the movie. The movie was not particularly well done, in my opinion. I think the script was bad. I think the acting was bad. And I can say that as a non-actor who would probably never, ever act in his life. So I have complete authority to trash other people who do act. I just didn't think it worked. It was not a great movie. And plus I'd read the book and knew the story. And so, I don't know, I'm not in love with that. But here's your homework assignment for you crazy people out there, because I know somebody's going to look this up and come back with it. I'm going to give you a hint, and then I'm going to give you a camera, and then you're going to have to go and find the movie. The hint is a catchphrase that is from the script, from the movie, which will be repeated over and over. And the catchphrase is, perforate and sever, and the camera is a Leica R system. Yes, there is a feature film, Hollywood made, but not shot in Hollywood, shot in a remote location. Another hint, I can't keep giving you hints. You guys are lazy. You'll get used to this and take advantage of me. Perforate and sever, Leica R system in a movie. I saw a clip of this thing. This goes back 30 years. I saw a clip of this thing, and I saw the trailer had a guy holding a Leica R camera. And this was at the time in my life when I was like, all I thought about was photography. I was a boring, boring human being. All I thought about was photography. I see this trailer, and of course no one in America's ever heard of this movie. And this was back when you had to go to the video store. And I went to the video store, and I literally tracked down, not my video store or the next town's video store. I had to go to like Guam to get this thing, but I found it, and I think it's actually a decent movie. It's corny, but it's there. So whoever finds it, come back to me. And don't be an ass. Don't go to Google and Google it. Go to the video store and try to find it. And just go into the video store and say perforate and sever Leica R camera. And then duck and cover. Number 2, Dan, regarding my question about the native village in Brazil, the story is how they maintain their own culture and tradition without getting assimilated into the local Portuguese Brazilian culture. So last week, somebody asked me a question about, he's got access to a village of, what is it? A village in Brazil, 700 people. Well, the thing is, you're not going to be able to cover 700 people. So my point was, this was the follow-up question to last week's question about how, if you get access to a group like this, how are you going to tell that story? And my return question was, what is your story? And he came back with, how does this group of people, 700 people, not get assimilated into the Portuguese Brazilian culture? So I don't think there's any way that you're going to cover 700 people. So my advice is the same advice I would give somebody doing any project that deals with a huge body of a group of people, is narrow it to one person and just focus on that one person. Because if you're going in and out of this village, unless you're going to live there over an extended period of time, you're going to be parachuting in and out, and you don't want to have to restart the project every single time you go back in. And plus, it helps the audience get to know someone. You want them to feel an emotional connection and a bond to the person that you're photographing, and if it's changing all the time, it's harder to do that. So when they start to become attached to this person through your photographs, that's when action happens. That's when good things happen. So go back and reduce it down to a single person. It would be like covering the fighting in Ukraine and just randomly covering the front lines, which is probably an interesting thing to do and worth doing, and you're going to get amazing images. But it's also interesting to follow one person and just spend day after day after day, because then it shows like 24 hours of what this person, the hell that this person is going through. That's what I would do. That's my suggestion. Number 3, this is a long question. Everyone have a bathroom break, make a smoothie, take a power nap. Here it goes. I'm writing you because I have a few questions I hope that you can help me with. This is a long question, but it's got a pretty relatively short answer. I shoot film. Yes, I'm one of those hipsters, I guess. I've never owned a digital camera. 7 to 8 years ago, I went to the local darkroom where I live. I spend as much time as possible down there as I can because I love this so much. I want to learn more, and I want a camera that I can trust. Right now, I use either a Nikon F5, an FM2, or a 4x5 Graflex for when I really want to punish myself. They're all great to use, but I've always wanted to use a rangefinder, and after I tried my uncle's Leica M6 a while back, I knew that I needed to own a Leica at some point, not to talk or think too much about the how of photography, as you call it, but I cannot get Leica out of my head. Also because I sometimes have a hard time trusting the reliability of a 30-year-old electronic F5. Because of this, I wanted to ask you, how is the workflow with a Leica and a handheld meter? And how to meter well out in the field. I do not have the money for an M6, but might be able to buy an M4 or M2, and I need to know how to learn how to work like that. Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. Number 1, yeah, you're probably focusing far too much on the equipment that you're using. You have a Nikon FM2. That is a bulletproof camera that will work for the rest of your life. That is what everybody had when I started in photography. I would say 80 to 90% of the market when I started in photography was Nikon manual cameras, FE2, FM2, F3. Everybody shot those cameras. FA was another one that people had. And they are bulletproof. I mean, even when I got out of school in 1992 and I was working in the newspaper world, 93, 94, 95, that kind of thing, there was a guy, one of the best photographers at the paper that I worked at, and we had 20-something photographers, and the competing paper had 20-something photographers, all working out of the same darkroom. Most people by that time had switched over to autofocus. Canon was coming in and really strong, and had really taken over market share, so it flipped from about 80% Nikon to 80% Canon in a very short amount of time. Nikon fell asleep at the wheel. They kind of pulled a chapter out of the Kodak playbook, which is, hey, we're great, everybody loves us, no one's ever going to leave us. And sure enough, Canon came out with autofocus and just crushed Nikon. But one of the best photographers at the paper was shooting FM2s, and he was really good. And if it worked for him, my guess is he's probably a lot better photographer than you are right now. And the reason I say that is he had a 40-year career and was shooting every single day for that entire time. That makes you pretty good at what you're doing. So that camera worked for him, it would work for you. I wouldn't worry about the Nikon F5 until something goes wrong. The Nikon F4 was the garbage dump. That was a dumpster fire camera. You could get a good one and it was fine, or like me, you could have 2 bad ones and they were in and out of the repair shop constantly. That was such a junk heap of a camera, but it was Nikon's first attempt at really catching up to Canon, and the autofocus on the F4 was a joke compared to the Canon. Most people bought the F4 because it was an upgrade in a lot of ways over the F3, but the autofocus was not nearly capable of what the Canon was. By the time the F5 came out, that camera was dialed. That is an amazing camera from Nikon, so I wouldn't worry about the reliability of the F5. My guess is you've just fallen prey to the online talk about Leica and the Leica M6 because all the film hipsters use a Leica M6. Frankly, the M4 to me is a better camera. And this was explained to me by someone at Leica, and I have no idea if this is true or not, so some of you geeks out there, if you're interested, you could look it up. The Leica M4 is made primarily of brass, and there's fewer working parts. And when you wind an F4 compared to an F6, it feels like you're winding, I don't know, a Porsche Turbo compared to a Yugo. The M6, the M6 is crude in comparison. It's also made out of like tinny kind of zinc alloy compared to the 4, which feels like you could stand on it, drive over it, and it would be totally fine. So if you can get your hands on an M4, the tricky thing with the M4 is you need to crimp the film leader when you load it, because otherwise 12, 13 frames in, it can jam on you. But once you learn to crimp the leader, it works totally fine. Again, I've said this in other films, the M4 and the M6 suffer from the same Achilles heel, which is the film rewind crank. And if you ding that camera or drop that camera or bang that camera on the rewind crank, it's rewind crank, it's over. And I have done that several times and been stuck in the field with an unoperable camera. So you don't need a Leica. If you want a rangefinder, go try something inexpensive. But here's the other thing, and I just wrote a blog post for Blurb about this very thing called commitment to camera. If you think you're gonna dabble with a Leica rangefinder, you are sorely mistaken. you don't dabble with that camera and make good work. You have to leave everything else at home and only use that camera and dedicate yourself to it for an extended period of time. Otherwise, you will just not reap the benefit. I'm changing because I feel like it. You will not reap the benefit or learn how to use that camera if you're trying to use it in addition to something else. I've seen this happen, and that's what my blog post was about when I got into photography, realizing that so many of the people that I was discovering, and so many of the people that I was like, I want to be like that person, they had Leicas. They had other cameras, oftentimes had other cameras as well, but the Leica was always around their neck. And what I realized was a lot of those people who had a Leica around their neck and SLRs on their shoulders weren't really using the Leica a whole lot. The Leica was representative of another era. It was representative of personal work as opposed to the cash register cameras they carried on their shoulders. The Leica was, man, I really wish I could just do this kind of work, but I can't because I have to use these other cameras to shoot color to supply to the magazines. But this camera around my neck represents who I really want to be. And it also represents the same photographers that I was finding interesting and inspiring from way back in time who were Leica shooters. And so that's why so many of these photographers in the 80s, 90s, 2000s bought and sold their Leicas all the time. They'd sell it, and then they'd have remorse, they'd buy it back. They'd kind of tinker with it, shoot a couple rolls, they'd be like, I'm not really using it, I'll sell it, remorse, buy it back. That's how I got my Leicas, people. So you don't need it, just shoot the FM2. That's the easiest thing right there. Just get a nice lens, one lens, leave everything at home, and go take a year or 2 years and shoot every single day. Alrighty then, number 4. Do Americans still suck at travel fashion? I love this question. I love it. And my question right back at you and right back at the entire audience is, what the hell are you thinking when you get on a plane in your pajamas? Yes, Americans suck at travel fashion. By the way, this t-shirt, I was thinking about it. This t-shirt is 4 years old. I have 2, 3, 4, I probably have 5 of these t-shirts. These were gifted to me by the co-editor, founder of AG23, the one and only, the man, the myth, Rick Elder, who at that time was the CEO and director of Beyond Clothing. And when I first met Rick, I was in Orange County, but I eventually ended up in Seattle at the Beyond headquarters, HQ. And Rick's like, here, take some t-shirts. This is called quality manufacturing. These things are still going strong. I was gifted a t-shirt last week by someone else, but it's kind of a novelty t-shirt. It's a Grateful Dead New Orleans Saints t-shirt, and the person who gifted it to me knew that I was a big New Orleans Saints fan. It's here somewhere. I should have brought it out. And it's a New Orleans Saints helmet, but it also has the Dead logo. It's pretty cool. But it's a t-shirt like you would buy at a souvenir shop downtown. And if I wash it 3 times, it's gonna just vaporize. These things or whatever, they don't die. And I sweat through these things all the time. And half the time I just leave it in the sun until it bakes into a hard, crispy thing that I have to go crack to put it back on again. They're still going. Quality manufacturing. Rick is no longer with Beyond, but I'm sure these t-shirts are still out there. In fact, when these eventually wear out, I know where I'm going for t-shirts. What was I talking about? Travel fashion. Americans suck, but arguably there are 2 or 3 other countries that will remain nameless that are vying for the title of the most slovenly, unskilled fashion people on the face of the earth. It never ceases to amaze me what Americans wear when they get on the plane. And something I learned a long time ago from my father, who was a road warrior traveler. My father, not international travel, domestic travel, but flying for business around the United States nonstop from the time I was born until beginning of college. My father was on the road quite a lot. And my dad, I was just talking to a friend about this the other day. I have a new suitcase coming, and my father had the original Zero Halliburton suitcase, and then he had this like satchel thing that he carried that was sort of like, it was pre-computer, so it was like his notebook, his business crap and his book. He had this bag for 40 years. I kid you not, 40. These things, we had the Zero Halliburton cases. For all I know, they're in my mom's attic. They're indestructible, but they were like the ones that had the light blue interior, and they were that Zero Halliburton, absolutely bulletproof. My guess is those were probably built a lot better than the modern versions. That's just in keeping with most old things compared to new things. We like flashy, but we don't build to last. My father said to me, look, how you dress on an airplane is going to have a huge impact on how you are treated while you fly. And I believe that 100%. I always try to dress at least hip, you know, a little bit hip. That's it. That's all. Just don't wear pajamas and like slippers or shorts and sandals on the plane unless you're flying to, you know, Bermuda or something. And even then, I still wouldn't do it. So yeah, Americans are terrible. When you're traveling abroad and you see Americans, you can spot them a mile away. If you ever, and I've said this before, if you catch me in baggy khaki pants and those geriatric white tennis shoes, call in an airstrike. I mean, just get my coordinates and dump your entire load on my pod, just like in Platoon. Dump it on my pod. Just call in an airstrike. I don't care what kind of missile, Tomahawk, doesn't matter. Just cook me down, because at that point, there's no point in me existing on this earth. So yeah, step up the fashion game when you're traveling. You don't have to be, you know, Joe Fashion, because I'm not, obviously. But yeah, we're bad. Number 5, are you still using your Zoom H6 for audio recording? Funny you should ask. My Zoom H6 has done some very interesting things over the past month or so. I was so fortunate to be able to come in contact with a woman named Lynn Johnson, who is, as described by one of her friends, is a national treasure. She is a photographer that lives in the Pittsburgh area. Lynn is somebody that I've been following for a long, long time. I want to say she shot 27 or 37 articles for National Geographic, and she was kind enough to sit down with me to do an interview. The interview was interrupted by my wife ringing the doorbell at Lynn's house, and I had to hit stop on the audio recorder. And when I hit record, the numbers came back on, the red numbers that said it's recording, but it wasn't. And I lost the second half of the interview, and that happened again in somebody else's interview. And so the other thing weird about my H6 audio recorder is I think it melted, because it is now covered. It's like the coating on the plastic that came from the factory is gone, and the entire thing is like grabbing a piece of fly paper. It is the stickiest. The entire thing is so sticky. If I put it in my hand and turn my hand upside down, it would not leave my hand. That can't be good. I don't know much about audio recorders and the technology inside, but they're not supposed to be sticky. Mine is sticky, and I have tried everything to kind of try to get off what's making it sticky. I've tried chemicals, I've tried soap, I've tried degreaser, nothing. And by the way, anytime you put a piece of fabric up against it to try to wipe off what you've put on there to get rid of the sticky, it sticks to the Zoom H6. So I don't want to use the Zoom H6 anymore. It's technically right behind me in a bag that you can't see, and I'm in the market for something new, and I don't really know what I want. I want something smaller than the Zoom H6 because I don't need 6 channels, and I really don't even need 4 channels. I just need 2. And I know that Zoom makes a new one that's kind of a little square boxy one that looks pretty good. I also have that little tiny Sony field recorder, but it's kind of hard to use. It works okay. I mean, it's tiny, it's this big. And it's the one, and I had binaural microphones that I was using with it. The problem with my binaural microphones, it's not that the microphones are not good. They are. They're the Soundman from Germany. They are. But you have to be motionless. And if the cord even rubs on your neck or on your shirt, you can hear that sound and feedback. So you have to stand motionless, and the audio recorder needs to be on the ground or on something motionless, because you'll pick up every single thing. So I need to upgrade my audio recorder, and I honestly don't know what I'm going to get, but something. So technically I am using the Zoom H6. The one thing I will say about the Zoom H6 is it is durable beyond belief. I've been using that thing now. My guess is it's at least 10 years old, and the XLR cables that I use with it, in 10 years of using XLR cables, I've had one go bad. That's it, one. And it probably went bad because people have stepped on it, they've dropped it. It's taken a lot of abuse, but I love audio recorders that use XLR. Even though they're bigger and bulkier, they last. And again, I've mentioned this many times. People have said, oh, why don't you just use an iPad and use these recorders and use your iPhone and do this and that. All of that stuff that revolves around those, I personally have found them to be incredibly delicate And frankly, there is so much that can go wrong, and so much that went wrong when I used my iPad as my recording device and when I used my phone as my recording device. Not only did everything break on a pretty regular basis, because it felt like you were working with bird legs. Everything was teeny and tiny, which was great, and it looks cool, and it packs away really nice, and your back's like, oh, this is way better than using the Zoom with the audio, you know, with your XLR cables, until you heard the audio file. And there's a reggae station playing through your audio recording that you couldn't hear when you recorded it. Yeah, that happened to me. So that was a short-lived experiment. I'm sure it's better now. But I want something to record sound in the field. And frankly, I would love a long directional mic to record bird sound. That would be fantastic. Number 6. Best Matt Damon movie. Man, what's up with all these movie questions about Matt Damon, and why Matt Damon all of a sudden? Pretty easy though. Good Will Hunting, love that movie. Great script, great story, no special effects. All this shit that Hollywood is making now, all these superhero movies and action movies that are all green screen, I don't see any of them. I don't want to see them. I'm not interested in them. So when Hollywood whines about all kinds of stuff, I'm like, stop making garbage. Like, every now and then make a film that's decent. Maybe it's Oppenheimer. Am I going to see Barbie? No, I'm not going to see Barbie. I'm not going to waste my time in the theater that's with something like that. Oppenheimer, maybe, but here's the other thing. Oppenheimer, that story is not new to me. I live in New Mexico. I've been to the Trinity site several times. I have read everything I can get my hands on. So the story is not a novelty to me. I already know the story. I know the detail. I know about the people who were involved that aren't Oppenheimer. I know their history and where they came from and what was happening in their countries when this was going on and how they got to the United States. All of that stuff. I've had an Oppenheimer sticker on my van for years. So I'm not in a rush to go see it because I already know the story. Now, I want to go see it because of the filmmaking techniques, and I'd like to see it in the theater because I think that's giving credit to the people involved. They want you to see it in the theater, and so eventually I will get to see it in the theater. Good Will Hunting, the Bourne series I love, and Ford versus Ferrari. I loved Ford Ferrari, but Christian Bale's a badass. That dude, I mean, I think he's a little feisty in real life, but he's a really, really good actor, and I think anyone who's in a film with him benefits from being in a film with him, and so I loved Ford versus Ferrari, and I'm sure there's other Matt Damon films, but Good Will Hunting, Bourne, and Ford Ferrari. But the real question is, why didn't you ask me what best films Frances McDormand has made? What about the female actors in the world? And I just pulled her out of thin air. Love her as an actor. And what I love about Frances McDormand is she's a total chameleon. I've seen films like Nomadland, which also I read the book, so I was kind of ahead of the curve on that movie as well. And you know, that's a movie where she's in a tough spot and she looks kind of tough. But then there was another movie where she was like alluring. I mean, that's the thing. You're looking at her like, whoa, she can kind of play anything. But easy peasy here for Frances McDormand. Number 1, obviously, Wonder Boys. Michael Chabon. I love Wonder Boys. I love that movie. I love everything about it. I love the cast. Number 2, Almost Famous. Don't do drugs. Don't do drugs. I love Almost Famous. That's one of my all-time favorite movies. I know cool. You're not cool. These people are not your friends. You have to be merciless. Lester Bangs. That is one of the best quotes, and for any documentary photographer out there, you better have that etched. You might want to tattoo that on your neck. These people are not your friends. You have to be merciless. Loved that. Okay, and when the other one was Fargo. Anytime a human gets put in a wood chipper, I'm all over that. So yeah, that was my that's my things. That's my films. Okay, one more question. What are we at? 30 minutes. It's short for me, but oh God, you guys are geeks. You're geeks. You're geeks. This is hard. This is actually a really hard thing for me to answer, because if you saw the range of crap that I have and the range of crap, more importantly, that I use, then you would know how challenging this is. But I guess we could start here. By the way, I filmed myself from the back the other day. I thought for sure I'd have a bald spot by now. I don't have a bald spot. My hair's still there. It's going gray really fast. No big surprise there. I'm married. Just kidding. This is the bag I carry every day. And I frame all my images through this strap just to make sure that it's going to be a good photograph, and then I get my camera out and I shoot it. No, this is the bag I carry every day. And what was the question? Why are you talking about your bag, moron? What's the question? What are your essential EDC items? Good God, the fact that we even have something called EDC, men, you should be embarrassed. I'm embarrassed for us as a chromosome. I have a lunch meeting I have to go to, so I'm trying to shoot this, edit this, and upload it before I go, which is gonna be tight. My everyday stuff, and you say to yourself, what kind of a douche puts this on there? Like, you put this on there because it's supposed to be, oh, this just looks cool, and it's like, tactical, and you got this bag, and then you got this. No, I just used this morning at sunrise on the beach. When I take my sandals off, I clip them on here and they hang here so that I don't have to hang on to the sandals, and that way I can use my camera when I'm running. That's just one reason I use it. I'm actually going fishing tonight, and I'll be using this as well to clip some things on there when I fish, including my headlamp that comes on and off. What do I carry every day? I carry a hat, and this is a Brooks, I want to say. It's a running hat. It's super lightweight, and again, I sweat through this like every single day, and then I put it in the sink, throw it in the sun, it dries out. It's lasted for quite a while, but it doesn't weigh anything, which is kind of nice. I have a fake spider and a yo-yo that I carry. Not really. Camera. That's in there. Essentials. Nikon Trailblazer binoculars. I use those every day as well. I use them at sunrise when I'm sitting out in front reading because the birds go crazy. Red-eyed vireo was the bird yesterday that I kept hearing and hearing and hearing, but I was never able to actually spot. So that's a bit frustrating, but I'll get him. Journal, extra pens. These are colored because when I'm making notes in here about the books I'm reading, I need to color code sort of certain things, and then when I see the color pattern, it tells me what is in that section of notes. Yeah, that's kind of a beautiful mind thing maybe, but not in a really intelligent beautiful mind thing, but just more in a kind of an oddball beautiful mind thing. Masks, just in case. When COVID-23 comes, you're probably gonna want keep a mask handy. What else is in here? Front pocket. Hello! Eyeglass case with a, what do you call it? Chamois to clean my eyes. Headlamp, I used it last night for about an hour walking in the dark, trying not to get run over. Always have a lighter. This comes from growing up in the West and knowing that at some point you're gonna get trapped overnight, either outside or in your vehicle in a snowstorm. And yeah, you might wanna have a lighter. This one has a really cool, like, jeweled turquoise case. The lighter is removable, but it has this cool silver case, which I really like. Chapstick, I live in the West, gotta have a chapstick. These are Ceremonic headphones. Sound-wise, these blow the apples out of the water, but they don't fit in your ear quite as well, and I've had these now for 2 years, and now they're getting a little wonky with the charge and stuff, but I really like these Ceremonic headphones. And again, the sound I found to be superior to the Apple, but they're maybe not as ergonomic, and if I was gonna go running, which I don't run in headphones, I don't cycle in headphones, but if I was going to, I would probably buy the Apple, whatever those are. One of these. These always make me sneeze. This is a good thing when you get on a plane and the person next to you has the breath of death, and you're like, how do I subtly tell them that they're gonna kill all of us if they don't keep their mouth closed for the rest of the flight? So you get out and you hold this like 10 inches away. It's like Jim Carrey in Dumb and Dumber. I got one of those. Somebody just gave me this. It's tiny. I have a good flashlight somewhere. It's somewhere around here. Oh, I have my headlamp, but I have another flashlight because I'm a dork. Wallet. This thing is pretty nice. This has whatever that blocking thing is in it that they can probably hack. A good hacker can work their way around. ID, money, library card, AAA, insurance cards, 2 credit cards. Normal stuff. What else? There's a zippered pocket here I forgot about. By the way, this bag is a Mystery Ranch bag. It is incredibly well designed. It's a Ruck 15, and oh, by the way, there's a laptop slot in this thing that nobody even sees. It's like right here at the top, you look right past it. Velcro, and it sucks up my laptop and you can't even tell it's there. This is such a good, well-designed bag. What else do I have in here? Oh, this is might want to keep this. I have 3 black tea bags. Gotta have black tea. And a little cashish, just in case I need to, you know, pay off someone for something horrible I've done. What else is in here? Business cards from people that I've met so far on this trip that I need to remember to get back to. And I got a parking permit for the beach in Maine. It's floating around in here. Yeah, that's my essential stuff. But the other thing that you don't see is every day for me is a bevy of different activities that all require their same stuff. So my everyday carry varies throughout the day. For the first like 2 hours or 3 hours of the day when I'm either running, cycling, hiking, or you know, outside, whatever, doing something outside, then I have a different bag. I have my yoga stuff and my calisthenics stuff across the ear. That's the bag that I put on the front of the Brompton. It's a piece of Brompton luggage. So today when I ride over for the business meeting, I'll be on a folding bike and I can put a piece of Brompton luggage on the front and take everything I need for the business meeting. Got my yoga mat. And then here I've got a huge camera bag that has my birding stuff in it. I've got bicycle shoes and helmets and bags and everything else that I use for that. And then tonight I'm going to be fly fishing one of the local rivers, and I'll be in my collapsible canoe. And I've got another bag full of, it's a Mountain Smith fanny pack that I have all my flies and my tippet and all my fly fishing stuff that'll go around my waist when I'm in the canoe. And then this green backpack will be on my back the whole way, which is what makes me so nervous. I don't have a waterproof backpack and I need a waterproof backpack. So the entire time tonight when I'm fishing and I'm in the canoe, I'm gonna be nervous. This canoe is stable and the river's mellow. It's not like I'm shooting rapids. I'm not Jim Barrett Adventurer, or I'm not even Ted Barrett Adventurer. I'm just me on a river fly fishing, but it makes me nervous because if I go over or my wife tries something insane in the canoe, and we go over, I'm gonna have to swim to shore holding the backpack above my head, which is not that easy. You would think it would not be that difficult, but if you got a long swim with a backpack trying to hold it out of the water, not fun. So I need a waterproof backpack. I do. I have a Pelican case, but those are so clumsy and funky I don't like opening and closing a Pelican case. And I can't put it on my back. I need to, like, you know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about. You know where I'm going with this. That's it. Thank you to, someone sent me this. Look at this thing. It's a hawk. It's a hawk. What it's like to be a bird. This dude, David Allen Sibley, he's the Tiger Woods of the birding world, arguably. There's a bunch of Tiger Woodses of the birding world, but he's one of them. And thank you for sending that. I can't wait to start reading it. And again, I'm one person with one opinion. And I will be back. I've got some working on what am I working on? So here's the thing. Let me just end with this, because we're only 40 minutes in here, which for me is nothing. Let me just end with this. Somebody asked me the other day, what's the end game here for you on YouTube? Why are you doing the YouTube thing? And they said, is it monetary? Is it financial? Is it a monetary reward? And I said, the last monthly payment that I got from YouTube was $98. So that doesn't even cover an hour of my time, let alone any of the equipment or anything else involved in the YouTube channel. So no, I'm losing money on YouTube. I will never make money on YouTube because I don't fit the algorithm. So YouTube won't show my films to a wide audience. They never will. The reason I'm on YouTube is I'm learning, and this learning is aiming towards something totally new that I'm still working on, and I'll tell you about it when I get to a point where I think it's interesting enough to tell you about it. That's why I'm on YouTube. The initial push to get on YouTube came from Blurb. Blurb said, can you make video for us? And I said, I don't know. I've been a still photographer for most of my life, but I've never done video, but I'd like to learn because I think it would be fun and I might be good at it, and sure, I'll try it. That's the only reason I started on YouTube in the first place. So it was not Dan saying, I'm gonna be a YouTuber, or Dan, I'm gonna build some huge following and make my living off of YouTube. That never entered my mind or the equation, and it still hasn't, because I don't think I could ever do it on YouTube. I don't fit the algorithm, and I'm not going to fit the algorithm, because the algorithm is based on your analytics. And when you get into the analytics will tell you exactly the kind of film that you should be making if you want to increase your follower count, your subs. The problem is the second you do that, your channel is not your channel. Your channel is YouTube's channel. And frankly, a lot of people are okay with that. A lot of people build their lives to feed the algorithm. And some of them are incredibly successful at it. So I totally get why they would do it. That's not me. I cannot imagine doing that because I would be so miserable making those films because these films would just be about cameras. That's why 99% of the films on YouTube about photography are either directly about cameras or they're veiled, quote, cinematic films, but inevitably it comes back to the story of how it was made or the software that was used or how the color grading was done and all the technical sort of nerdy side of photography. But like, I know a guy that makes films about photo books, how to design them, how to lay them out. I kid you not, his films get like 65 views total. This guy's giving a free education on photo book making and he gets 65 views. That tells you that, in essence, that is a roadmap to how psychologically damaged photography has become online. That a film, and this is another great example. There was a series on, I don't know if it was originally on YouTube, it might have been somewhere else. It was about Sebastião Salgado's project Workers Project. And it was a documentary film that was made about him that was cut into like 7 small films. So they just divided it up and released it. I think it was on YouTube. Anyway, they released it. The first film had like 10,000 views. By the time you got to the 7th installment of the film, it had like, I don't know, 1,200 views. And I was just like, good God. And then you turn around and there's a YouTube film by some person who has no training, no knowledge whatsoever, and is either a total geek that just does camera, or it's some like cinematic person who's like selling presets and, you know, oh, I can tell you how to do these images in Lightroom or whatever, and the film has like whatever, 150,000 views, and you're like, good God, how did we get here? How did we get here? I think it was when they started screwing around with the Coke formula. You know, Coke. And by the way, cocaine, don't leave your cocaine in the White House. The point is to do the cocaine in the White House, because then you got something to talk about. Then you got street cred. You're like, I just did an 8-ball in the presidential library, and your friends are going to be like, well done. Not only in quantity, but location. Well done. Yeah, that's my public service announcement for the day. If you're ever going to do cocaine in the White House, do it in the White House. By the way, I've never done cocaine. I have no interest in cocaine, and I'm not advising anyone to use cocaine because it's idiotic, frankly. And I'm not sure there's a better word. Adios.